There was something unusual about the way she asked the question. I said you can stay until morning. She smiled with quiet gratitude, looked around the little cottage as though memorizing every corner, and then asked in a voice so gentle it almost disappeared into the silence. What if I never leave? Most people would have laughed, assuming it was a joke. Oliver didn't. Something in her eyes told him those words carried far more weight than they appeared to. He stood in the doorway, still holding the old brass key to the spare room. For a moment neither of them spoke. The evening sunlight stretched across the timber floor, turning the polished wood into warm shades of honey. Finally, Oliver smiled. Then, he answered softly, we'd probably have to buy another coffee mug. The young woman laughed for the first time that day. It wasn't a loud laugh. It sounded like someone remembering what happiness used to feel like. That was how everything began. Oliver Bennett lived alone on the edge of a quiet coastal village where everyone knew everyone else. His small white cottage overlooked rolling green hills that met the sea a few kilometers away. Life there moved slowly. People waved from passing tractors. Shopkeepers remembered birthdays. The baker always slipped an extra roll into children's bags. Oliver loved the simplicity. After years working as a carpenter in busy cities, he'd returned home hoping for something that couldn't be bought. Peace. He wasn't rich. His workshop behind the cottage barely paid the bills. He repaired rocking chairs, restored old dining tables, built bookshelves for newly married couples, and occasionally crafted handmade toys that grandparents bought for birthdays. Every piece carried a little handwritten note tucked underneath. Made to last longer than today. People smiled when they discovered it. Oliver believed furniture should tell stories. He never imagined his own life was about to become one. It started on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. He had been delivering a restored oak bench to the village library when he noticed a young woman sitting alone outside the community center. She wasn't crying. She wasn't asking anyone for help. She simply looked lost. A small travel bag rested beside her feet. She watched people come and go without speaking to anyone. The village wasn't the kind of place where strangers stayed unnoticed for long. Mrs. Whitmore from the bakery had already glanced toward her 3 times. Old Mr. Harris slowed his bicycle as if considering whether to stop. Children playing nearby kept looking over curiously. Yet no one interrupted. Oliver carried the empty trolley back toward his truck but found himself slowing. His father had once told him something he never forgot. Sometimes kindness starts with noticing. So he noticed. He walked over carefully. Afternoon. She looked up quickly. Oh, hello. I'm Oliver. She hesitated before answering. Evelyn. You visiting someone? She looked toward the hills. I thought I was. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only tiredness. Oliver sat on the opposite bench, leaving respectful distance. You don't have to explain. She smiled faintly. Thank you. After several quiet moments he asked, Have you eaten today? She seemed surprised. Not since breakfast. Then come on. Oh, I couldn't. You absolutely could. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. Oliver chuckled. My grandmother used to say feeding people isn't an inconvenience. It's an investment. In what? In tomorrow. She stared at him before smiling. I've never heard anyone say that. That's because only my grandmother believed conversations should sound like handwritten letters. Against her better judgment, Evelyn followed him. The village cafe welcomed them with familiar warmth. Oliver! Called the owner. The usual? Actually, make it 2. Within minutes steaming soup, fresh bread, and tea appeared on the table. Evelyn looked embarrassed. I really can't let you pay. You can pay someone else someday. What if I never get the chance? Then I'll consider myself fortunate. She lowered her eyes. No one had answered her that way before. As they ate, conversation came naturally. Oliver learned she loved books. She enjoyed sketching old buildings. She had worked in several towns but never stayed anywhere very long. When he asked where she was headed next, she looked uncertain. I honestly don't know. He didn't push further. People carried stories they weren't always ready to tell. The afternoon stretched into evening. Eventually the cafe prepared to close. Oliver glanced toward the quiet street. "Do you have some more for tonight?" She hesitated just long enough to answer without words. "No." The village had one small guest house. Unfortunately, the annual Heritage Festival had filled every room. Oliver already knew. He rubbed the back of his neck thoughtfully. "I've got a spare room." She looked startled. "I couldn't." "You could. We've only just met." "That's true. I don't want people getting the wrong idea." "They won't." "You sound very certain." "I know my neighbors." She smiled. "I wish every town felt like this." "They don't?" Another pause. "I'll leave first thing in the morning." Oliver nodded. Then it settled. The cottage wasn't impressive. White walls. Blue shutters. An old pear tree beside the gate. A wooden porch with 2 rocking chairs he'd built himself. Inside, shelves overflowed with books, framed family photographs, and half-finished woodworking projects. Everything smelled faintly of cedar. "It feels..." Evelyn searched for the right word. "Safe." Oliver seemed pleased. "My mother would be happy to hear that." "You built most of this furniture?" "Nearly all. It's beautiful. It keeps me busy." She noticed little things. Fresh flowers in a jar. A handwritten recipe pinned beside the kettle. A chessboard waiting mid-game, although no opponent sat across from it. "You play alone?" Oliver laughed. "I practice losing gracefully." That made her laugh again. The spare bedroom overlooked the garden. Simple. Clean. Comfortable. Oliver handed her the key. "You can stay until morning." She accepted it carefully. Then came the question. "What if I never leave?" And his answer. "Then we'd probably have to buy another coffee mug." Neither realized those words would quietly shape both of their futures. The next morning arrived with birdsong and sunlight spilling across the hills. Oliver woke early as usual. He prepared porridge, toasted bread, and brewed coffee. He expected Evelyn to have already left. Instead, she stood outside repairing one of the garden fences with surprising determination. He blinked. "What are you doing?" She looked guilty. "I noticed the loose boards." "So naturally you started fixing them?" "I was trying to thank you." "You don't thank carpenters by stealing their jobs." She smiled. "I'm not stealing them." "What would you call it?" "Borrowing them." Oliver laughed. "Breakfast first. Fence later." She agreed. During breakfast she admitted she'd always enjoyed practical work. "My grandfather taught me." "Good teacher?" "The best." "What happened?" "He passed away years ago." "I'm sorry." "He believed every broken thing deserved one honest attempt before being replaced." Oliver pointed toward his workshop. "I think he would have liked it here." She looked through the window. "I think so too." After breakfast Evelyn packed her small bag. Oliver carried it to the front door. So, I suppose this is goodbye." She nodded. "Thank you for reminding me good people still exist." "You reminded me too." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I think we all forget sometimes." She reached for the bag. Before either of them could say another word, a voice called from outside. "Oliver!" It was Margaret Ellis from the library. She hurried through the garden carrying several folders. "I've been looking everywhere." "What happened?" "The reading festival." "What about it?" "Our stage builder cancelled." "When?" "This morning." "When does it start?" "Tomorrow." Oliver sighed. "I'll help." Margaret smiled with relief. "I knew you would." She noticed Evelyn. "Oh. You must be the visitor everyone keeps talking about." Evelyn looked embarrassed. "I suppose so." Margaret studied her thoughtfully. "Can you paint?" "A little. We desperately need signs." Oliver looked at Evelyn. "No pressure." Margaret added quickly. "Only if you're interested." Evelyn hesitated. She glanced toward her travel bag. toward the bus stop visible beyond the hill, then toward Oliver's workshop. Finally she smiled. I suppose one more day couldn't hurt. Oliver grinned. I was just thinking. What? We may actually need that second coffee mug after all. Oliver spent the next morning measuring timber while Evelyn sat beneath the shade of the old pear tree, surrounded by paint pots, brushes, and neatly stacked wooden signboards. The village reading festival had always been a favorite tradition, but this year it suddenly felt different. Every few minutes someone wandered into the workshop with a question, a cup of tea, or a cheerful greeting. Before long, everyone knew Evelyn by name. She noticed something remarkable about the village. Nobody seemed to ask the questions she feared most. No one asked why she had arrived with only one travel bag. No one demanded to know where she had come from. No one tried to solve her life before learning who she was. Instead they asked things like, do you prefer tea or coffee? Have you seen the sea at sunset yet? And, would you mind judging the children's bookmark competition? It was kindness without curiosity, and that made all the difference. By afternoon the reading stage was taking shape. Oliver worked with steady confidence, trimming each plank until it fit perfectly. He rarely hurried, believing rushed work usually created problems tomorrow. Evelyn watched him for a moment before speaking. You've repaired furniture for years. He nodded. You never get bored? He smiled without looking up. Every scratch tells a different story. And people? They're not much different. She looked at him thoughtfully. You always answer questions like that. My grandmother would say I inherited the family disease. What disease? Looking for hope before problems. She laughed. I think it's a good disease. So do I. Later that afternoon, a little girl wandered over carrying a broken wooden rabbit. Its ear had snapped off. She looked ready to cry. Mr. Bennett? Oliver knelt beside her. What happened? It fell off my shelf. He accepted the tiny toy as though it were priceless. I think we can help. He reached for a small bottle of glue while Evelyn watched quietly. The repair took less than 10 minutes. When Oliver handed it back, the girl hugged the rabbit tightly. Thank you. She skipped away as though the world had become perfect again. Evelyn smiled. You didn't charge her. I repaired a toy. You also repaired her afternoon. Oliver shrugged gently. I've learned they're usually connected. Those words stayed with Evelyn long after the workshop closed. That evening the whole village gathered outside the library for the festival opening. Strings of lights stretched between old oak trees. Children carried paper lanterns decorated with favorite book characters. Elderly neighbors sat together on folding chairs sharing homemade slices. Oliver's stage stood proudly beneath the lights. Evelyn's painted signs welcomed everyone with cheerful colors and elegant lettering. Margaret admired them. They're beautiful. Evelyn blushed. I wasn't sure anyone would notice. Margaret looked genuinely surprised. My dear, beautiful work always gets noticed. The festival began with storytelling. One by one local residents shared favorite memories, poems, and family tales passed down through generations. When it was Oliver's turn, he walked onto the stage carrying an old wooden toolbox. The audience smiled. I know, he began. A toolbox isn't much of a story. Soft laughter followed. It belonged to my father. He opened it carefully. Every tool inside has scratches. Some are older than I am. He lifted a worn hammer. When I was 12, I asked why he never bought shiny new tools. Oliver paused. He said, because these still know how to help people. The audience listened quietly. I think people are a little like that too. He looked around the crowd. We all collect scratches. No one spoke. But scratches don't make something worthless. He smiled warmly. Sometimes they prove we've spent our lives building something worth keeping. Applause filled the evening air. Evelyn found herself blinking back unexpected tears. For years she had believed her own disappointments made her someone people would rather avoid. Yet here was an entire village applauding the exact opposite idea. After the festival ended, neighbors lingered beneath the lights talking long into the evening. As Oliver and Evelyn packed away chairs, Mrs. Carter approached carrying a basket. "I baked too much again." Oliver chuckled. "You always do." "I know." She turned to Evelyn. "I've heard you're handy with paint. I enjoy it. Our church hall could use someone with your eye." "Oh. No pressure." Before Evelyn could answer, another neighbor appeared. "And the History Museum needs new display cards." A third joined them. "My granddaughter wants art lessons." Soon everyone seemed to have an idea. Not because they wanted something from Evelyn. Because they genuinely believed she belonged. Walking home beneath the stars, Evelyn finally spoke. "Does this happen often?" "What?" "People including strangers." Oliver thought for a moment. "Only until they stop being strangers." She smiled quietly. Back at the cottage they sat on the porch with warm mugs of tea. Neither hurried inside. The night air carried the scent of the sea. "I should probably leave tomorrow," Evelyn said softly. Oliver nodded. "If that's what you want." "I don't know what I want." He didn't answer immediately. Finally he asked, "Can I tell you something my mother used to say?" "I'd like that." "She believed there's a difference between running towards something and running away from something." Evelyn stared into her tea. "And if you're not sure which one you're doing, stay still long enough to find out." Those words echoed in her mind long after she went to bed. The next morning she walked through the village alone. For the first time in years she wasn't rushing to catch a train or searching job advertisements in unfamiliar towns. She simply walked. She visited the little bookshop where the owner insisted she borrow a novel. She stopped at the bakery where Mrs. Whitmore slipped an extra cinnamon roll into her bag. She wandered along the cliffs overlooking the calm sea. The village wasn't extraordinary because of its buildings. It was extraordinary because people noticed each other. Back at the cottage she found Oliver repairing an old rocking chair. He looked up. "I thought you'd gone sightseeing." "I did. And? I think your village has spoiled me." He laughed. "It has that effect." She hesitated. "Oliver." "Yes?" "I never actually told you why I came here." "You don't have to." "I think I want to." He set down his tools. She took a slow breath. "For years I kept moving." He listened quietly. "Every time I began feeling settled, something inside me whispered that I shouldn't stay." "Why?" "I thought if I left first, I could never disappoint anyone." Oliver remained silent. "So I accepted temporary jobs." She smiled sadly. "Temporary homes. Temporary friendships. I convinced myself independence meant never needing people." She looked toward the hills. "But after a while I realized something." "What?" "I wasn't protecting myself." She swallowed. "I was protecting myself from happiness." Oliver nodded slowly. "Because happiness asks us to trust." "Exactly." Another long silence settled between them. Finally Oliver smiled. "I'm glad you told me. Aren't you going to give advice?" "I don't think you need advice." "No? I think you already know what you're looking for." She frowned. "What is it?" "A place where leaving isn't your first plan." She stared at him. Those simple words reached somewhere deep inside her. Over the following weeks, one more day quietly became another. Then another. Evelyn rented the tiny cottage next door after its elderly owner moved to be closer to family. She insisted on paying full rent despite the owner's generous offer of a discount. "I want to earn my place," she explained. Oliver smiled. "I think you've already done that." She began helping at the library 3 afternoons each week. The museum asked her to design new information displays. The church hall invited her to paint a mural celebrating local history. Children started waving whenever she passed. One afternoon, little Noah ran across the village square carrying a drawing. "It's you!" Evelyn looked at the picture. It showed her sitting beneath the pear tree painting signs while Oliver built the reading stage. Above them the child had written in colorful letters, "The day our new friend came." Her eyes filled with tears. Oliver happened to walk past at that moment. He noticed the drawing. Then he noticed her expression. Without saying a word, he handed her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. She laughed through the tears. You carry one everywhere? My grandmother insisted. For emergencies? For feelings? She shook her head, smiling. Your grandmother sounds remarkable. The best person I've ever known. Evelyn carefully folded Noah's drawing. You know. What? I think this is the first place where people remembered my name before I had to introduce myself again. Oliver looked around the lively village square. Children laughing. Neighbors talking. Someone delivering fresh flowers to the library. Someone else repairing a neighbor's fence without being asked. He smiled. That's because this village has a habit. What habit? When someone arrives. He looked at Evelyn kindly. We quietly start hoping they'll stay. The words lingered between them as the afternoon sun warmed the square, and for the first time in many years, Evelyn realized that the idea of staying no longer frightened her. It felt like coming home. Months passed so naturally that neither Oliver nor Evelyn could point to the exact day when the cottage next door stopped feeling like a temporary address and became a true home. The seasons changed quietly. The pear tree that had greeted Evelyn with green leaves welcomed autumn with golden ones before standing bare through winter. Then, almost without anyone noticing, tiny blossoms appeared again, covering its branches in soft white flowers. Oliver often joked that the tree knew more about patience than most people. Evelyn had begun to believe he was right. She settled into a rhythm that felt wonderfully ordinary. 3 mornings each week she volunteered at the library, where children hurried in after school asking, Miss Evelyn, what should I read next? On other days she painted signs for local events, restored faded family photographs, and helped neighbors preserve old letters and journals that meant more than money ever could. She had once measured life by bus timetables and moving boxes. Now she measured it by birthdays, market days, and community gatherings. One Saturday morning Oliver found a small envelope tucked beneath his workshop door. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for fixing Mom's rocking chair. She says it feels like Dad is sitting beside her again. There was no signature. Just a pressed wildflower. Oliver smiled and placed the flower inside the old toolbox that had belonged to his father. Evelyn noticed. You keep every thank you note, don't you? I do. Why? Because difficult days have terrible memories. She tilted her head. What do you mean? They only remind us of what's gone wrong. He tapped the small collection of letters. So I keep reminders of what's gone right. She thought about that for a long time. A few weeks later she quietly began doing the same. She kept children's drawings. Kind notes from neighbors. Invitations to tea. A recipe Mrs. Whitmore insisted she copy. A bookmark made from pressed lavender. They all went into a wooden box Oliver built for her one afternoon without saying why. He simply handed it over. I thought you might need somewhere to keep tomorrow's memories. She smiled. I think I already have. He looked puzzled. Where? She gently tapped her heart before laughing. But the box will definitely help. The village prepared for its annual spring fair, the biggest event of the year. Everyone had a job. Oliver built wooden display stands. Margaret organized the book exchange. Mrs. Whitmore baked enough pies to feed what she claimed was half the county. Evelyn was asked to coordinate the welcome display at the entrance to the village green. She accepted, though she felt nervous. I've never organized something this big. Margaret smiled. Neither had any of us, the first time. On the morning of the fair, colorful bunting stretched across every street. Children chased bubbles through the square. Musicians tuned guitars beneath the old oak tree. Visitors from nearby towns filled the pathways. As people entered the fairgrounds, they stopped in front of Evelyn's welcome display. It wasn't elaborate. Just a beautifully painted wooden arch surrounded by flowers. Across the top she had carefully written, Everyone arrives as a stranger only once. People paused to read it. Many smiled. Some took photographs. An elderly visitor quietly whispered to his wife, I wish more places believed that. Oliver stood beside Evelyn watching everyone pass beneath the arch. I like it. She looked relieved. I wasn't sure. It sounds exactly like this village. She smiled. No. He looked at her. It sounds like what this village taught me. Later that afternoon, the mayor stepped onto the small outdoor stage. He thanked volunteers one by one. When he reached Evelyn's name, the applause seemed to last much longer than she expected. She felt overwhelmed. I've only been here a few months, Oliver quietly answered. Sometimes it doesn't take long for kindness to become part of a place. That evening, after the fair ended and the last lanterns glowed beneath the stars, the villagers stayed behind to tidy up together. No one complained. No one hurried away. Working together simply seemed natural. As Evelyn carried folded chairs toward the storage shed, she noticed a familiar sight. Near the entrance to the village stood a young man with a backpack. He looked uncertain. Not frightened. Just unsure where to go next. People walked past kindly, smiling, but he remained standing alone. Evelyn froze for a moment. She remembered another afternoon. Another travel bag. Another person trying very hard not to look lost. Without thinking, she walked over. Hello? The young man looked up. Oh, hello. I'm Evelyn. He smiled politely. I'm Daniel. Are you visiting someone? He hesitated. I thought I was. She couldn't help smiling. The answer sounded painfully familiar. Have you eaten today? His surprised expression made her laugh softly. Not since breakfast. I know a cafe. 20 minutes later they sat at the same table where Oliver had first bought her soup and fresh bread. Mrs. Whitmore recognized what was happening immediately. Without saying anything, she quietly added an extra slice of homemade cake. When Daniel tried to pay, Evelyn gently stopped him. You can pay someone else someday. He looked at her. What if I never get the chance? She smiled. Then I'll consider myself fortunate. The words felt just as warm now as they had the first time she heard them. When they finished eating, Oliver happened to walk into the cafe carrying a parcel. He stopped in surprise. Evelyn? She looked up with a grin. I borrowed one of your conversations. Oliver noticed Daniel. Then he understood. His smile widened. I see. Daniel looked confused. Have I missed something? Oliver chuckled. Only the beginning of a very good story. The guest house still happened to be full that evening. Daniel looked embarrassed. I'll catch the morning bus. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Oliver. Then she smiled. My spare room is ready. Daniel hesitated. I couldn't. You could. I don't want to inconvenience you. She laughed. You'd be surprised how often kindness begins exactly like this. Later that night, as Oliver walked home beneath the stars, he glanced toward Evelyn's cottage. The upstairs bedroom light glowed softly. For a moment he remembered the evening when she had first stood in his hallway holding a travel bag. He remembered handing her the spare room key. He remembered the question that had seemed almost impossible to answer. What if I never leave? He smiled to himself. Some questions weren't meant to be answered immediately. They were meant to become stories. The following Sunday, after the village service ended, everyone gathered outside sharing tea and homemade biscuits. Children played tag around the pear tree. Neighbors chatted in small circles. Daniel had already accepted temporary work helping the groundskeeper maintain walking trails. He looked happier than he had a week earlier. Mrs. Whitmore leaned toward Oliver. You know. What? I think your spare room has changed more lives than any hotel ever could. Oliver laughed. I only offered a bed. She shook her head. No. She looked toward Evelyn, who was helping a little girl tie a ribbon around her drawing. You offered someone the feeling that tomorrow was worth waiting for. Oliver didn't answer. He simply watched. A place wasn't special because of buildings. It became special because people chose kindness again and again until it became part of everyday life. As the afternoon faded into evening, Evelyn walked over carrying 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Oliver. He looked inside. Coffee. Just the way he liked it. She sat beside him on the porch where everything had begun. For a while they simply watched the sunset paint the distant hills in gentle shades of orange and pink. Finally she smiled. Do you remember what I asked you that first night? Oliver laughed. I don't think I'll ever forget. I asked. He finished the sentence with her. What if I never leave? She nodded. I'm glad you didn't. So am I. She looked toward the village. Children laughing in the distance. Neighbors waving goodnight. The library lights glowing warmly. The workshop standing open, waiting for tomorrow's projects. The pear tree swaying gently in the evening breeze. Then she quietly said something Oliver would remember for the rest of his life. I thought I was looking for somewhere to stay. He waited. It turns out. She smiled through grateful tears. I was looking for somewhere to belong. Oliver raised his coffee mug. To belonging. She gently tapped her mug against his. To noticing. He smiled. My father would have liked that. And your grandmother? He laughed. She'd probably say we still need another coffee mug. They both laughed, the sound carrying across the peaceful garden. Sometimes the greatest changes don't arrive with grand speeches or extraordinary events. Sometimes they begin with a simple invitation, a warm meal, a spare room, and the courage to notice someone who feels invisible. A single act of kindness rarely ends with one person. It grows. It reaches neighbors, strangers, families, and future friends in ways no one can predict. And perhaps that is the quiet miracle hidden inside ordinary days. Because when we open a door with compassion, we often discover that we are not only giving someone a place to stay, we are helping them find a place where hope can finally unpack its bags. And in doing so, we may discover that our own hearts become a little more like home as well.